The sedentary lifestyle and the fact that having high body fat is the most inflammatory tissue. So now your body's suppressing a hormone that is going to make you feel better because it is threatened. So that's a stressful environment in and of itself. So having that high inflammation, and that's why it can be a problem where men want to add testosterone that is not wanted into a body that is stressed and inflamed, not going to be as good a time as if they're leaner and have a better body composition. But I
It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk.
But I think part of that is also the video games and not getting outside and all of that, in addition to a lot of the environmental toxins, which used to be like super woo-woo and like, oh, people using glass containers and stainless steel are such dorks. And actually now that's more necessary. It can be overwhelming because it's not something that you can really tangibly feel or understand. Like, yes, we have all these plastics and all these xenoestrogens and stuff coming at us, but no one really feels that like happening in real time. So it's easy to dismiss. So what I tell men is, listen, here's some structure for you guys to consider as like the big rocks. If you're using plastic containers to store food and reheat and all of that, switch that to glass. Switch your water bottle from plastic water bottles to stainless steel glass if you're brave. And then the second thing would be any products that you're putting on your body every day. So not everybody is using lotion or makeup or whatever, but shower gels, shampoo, all that stuff, aftershave. If any of that has the toxic chemicals that create those fake estrogens, that's something you want to look at changing out. And fortunately, it's a lot easier nowadays where there's a lot more products. Before it was very hard. Even at the hotel, it says no phthalates, no parabens, no chemicals. And I was like, oh, wow. So they're starting to realize that this is a problem. And so I would say lower body fat if you're over 15%, switch out your Tupperware for glass, water, stainless steel. And then the third thing, the products that you're using every day. There's obviously way more that somebody can handle, but I think it's overwhelming to a point where you can go down many rabbit holes, take your Wi-Fi out, but it's like, at what point do you don't have to move
on your porch and put your balls in the sun every morning when the sun rises?
No, I tried that.
Okay, damn. But I just think that hearing that stuff from you is interesting, right? Because like you said, on an N=1 scale, we're never going to feel the effect of whatever plastic bottle or whatever, right? But on someone who runs a business where you have an input from a whole demographic that are dealing with the potential outcomes of these supposedly minor things, you have the data to see the differences and what's actually having an effect, right? Because it'd be easy for someone like me to go, well, that's not going to change anything. But like, if you're literally dealing with hundreds of people every year or thousands, whatever, and you're making these changes and all those changes are in part bringing these outcomes, then at what point can you just say correlation has to equal causation at some point? Just because I haven't got this peer-reviewed meta-analysis, which will probably exist in 10 years' time, because the science is always a decade behind, right?
Yeah.
Like, just because we don't have that now doesn't mean I don't have the data where I can say, well, I think that's a freaking good idea. And even if it's not, what downside has it got?
Right.
Well, that's where I was going to go. Let's set that aside and just say that's all false, right? But if you're showering every morning, but you're using a different product and you think that it's going to help your health, that's reinforcing that pattern in the morning that you're doing things to help your health, to help recover.
Yeah.
Right. If you're taking the food out of a plastic container and then just putting it in a freaking bowl to microwave it, that again is reinforcing that I'm doing things to become better fit. Right. So say it's all bullshit. That's not. Because if you're eating 3 times a day and you shower in the morning, there's 4 times every single day that your brain is being reinforced. I'm doing things to become better. I'm doing things, and that's going to carry over to all the other things, right? To where you get in these conversations with people that, are in that rabbit hole of eliminate all this shit out of your life. And then the other one's like, oh, that's all bullshit and all this other kind of stuff. But nobody's saying you're reinforcing positive patterns.
It's a good
from that. So they both can be right. I don't fucking know, but I know that's right. Nobody's going to convince me that that's not going to make a difference. because it's so easy to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it reinforces that pattern.
It's like buying new gym clothes.
Yeah. If that reinforces the pattern to somebody to actually make it to the gym that otherwise wouldn't, then tell me it's bad.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, it's the same with talking to a guy in the military. With being part of the military, right? And like, I suppose it's kind of the same thing, right? Like, start your day as you mean to go on. So if that's using a soap,
different soap, come on, that's so easy, man.
Eating your breakfast out of a different container, getting 5 or 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning with your phone still in the drawer, whatever. Does it really matter if it just gets the cog turning?
Yes.
In the right way? Like,
I think people argue about dumb shit way too often.
Well, they do. And I like to look right in the middle there and say, okay, but, and then ask either one of them that. Then what are they going to say?
You can't argue that.
No, it's good that you start off knowing that you're putting shit on your body that could potentially destroy you and make you die 10 years later. That's a good way to start your day, right?
Oh my God. Yeah,
I'd say one of the questions that came up I quite liked was if you could just put one message out kind of now that the general population and demographic had to just learn about TRT and HRT, like kind of one sentence, one fact, what would that be? What would be the biggest takeaway statement for you that people just need to get their head around when it comes to HRT and TRT?
TRT is simply replacing what your body should already be biologically producing. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it's attached to a lot of the stigmas and the scariness and all that stuff because of research that's been outdated and refuted, but also a misunderstanding of associating it with bodybuilding only, which obviously are way higher doses than what guys on therapeutic use are doing it for. So same with the, I don't want to get too big. Cool. Try.
Yeah. So do you think there's still, even now, there's a big kind of misconception there with that in terms of what TRT actually is? In terms of like, you know, we're looking at it as a, you know, it's a replacement of what you should have but whereas the average person still looks at it as some kind of super physiological advantage, like a cheating mechanism.
Yeah. Because the discussion online too, a lot of like the questions that I get is understanding what it can do for you. And this goes back to what we were discussing before, because they think that it might be the answer to all their prayers and it'll finally make them jacked. And even guys who go on like 2 months in, they're like, you know, well, I've been on TRT for 8 weeks and I'm not jacked yet. And obviously that has a lot other variables that pour into that. But sometimes they see it as that's the only thing it does. They don't know how powerful it can be for your mind and for your brain and how for your heart and all that stuff with the cardio protection, with the conversion to estrogen and just living a higher quality of life. And it's one of the safest medications a man can take.
Yeah.
You know, you have commercials that are saying like you're going to have explosive diarrhea as side effects to certain pills and turn into cannibalism and all that stuff. Yet testosterone's bad.
Yeah.
Like it that still exists.
Yeah. The fake, the artificial jack or the accidentally being jacked thing just made me think of when we were talking about cardio before. People think it's going to kill their gains, it's going to gain muscle, but you look at every professional athlete that's jacked, they're doing way more cardio, way more than anybody than 10 minutes on the bike. 4 times a week. And NFL players, rugby players, all these people, that's all they're predominantly just doing that.
And then lifting on the side.
And then lifting on the side. Yeah. And if anybody's getting accidentally jacked,
it's them.
Yeah. It's them, right? Yeah. So we could say you should just only do more cardio.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just lift by accident and get jacked.
And not care about it.
But even that kind of goes back to like when we were talking about like, you know, you look at like the old time strongmen and guys 40s, 50s, and they're all working in farm fields and factories and stuff, just doing like exhausting physical jobs. And then obviously there's no PDs and stuff at that point. And some of those guys, that wasn't stopping them from doing anything what would still be considered incredibly impressive now.
Totally.
And I bet they could squat and deadlift heavy in the same week. without trashing themselves, which, we could, you
I
hear
know.
that kind of thing all the time, right?
Yeah.
I can't squat and deadlift heavy in the same week. Well, okay, maybe world record level, multiply, whatever. But at some point, do you want to ask yourself the question, would it be beneficial if I could get myself to the point where I could?
Mm-hmm.
Would that be a good thing if I could do both?
I don't see why not.
Because if I can do the lifts I compete in heavy more often, that might lead to more results, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a crazy thought.
That's what I do. Like Luke Lehman's talk at Silverback was about doing cardio, like for dudes. And so he put videos of me up with my deadlift and pull-up PR. And then he's like, yeah. And then Allie goes and runs an hour the next day. And so I'll put that on my stories. I'm like, yeah, I ran an hour yesterday. And then I'll be doing loaded pull-ups with like 60 pounds. And people are like, wait, like, so you don't lose strength and you're not shrinking? And oh my gosh, you can still do both. And I'm like, how cool is it that, yeah, you can actually lift that and then go run. I enjoy it. I played soccer. Like, it's okay. Because you're not going to shrivel up. Like they associate any type of cardio always. Well, I hate running. Why does it have to be running? There's 11 billion other choices that we have.
But when the zombie apocalypse hits, you're going to be pretty well prepared there.
Yeah,
all around. That's another great way of putting it. Like apocalypse ready. Maybe we should sell that training program. Just another one that came up there, because this is kind of maybe a little bit of personal experience here for me, but someone asked the question, do you find that you have to make any special considerations or have to work especially hard to combat the side effects of people who are on things like SSRIs when they're on TRT? Because obviously it normally comes with some kind of weight gain or lethargy and sometimes like that. So do you find in those scenarios that there's anything different that you have to do, or there's any methods that you use to combat those side effects with those individuals?
So we have the discussion, obviously, of what else they're on and understanding if they are experiencing those side effects, how we can best navigate that through their program. I am not somebody to say, well, you can get off of those medications. I'm not qualified, nor would I go near that. So I will lean on the medical practitioner to handle those conversations if they come up. Nothing so crazy, though, with any of our guys has happened. And we don't have a lot of them who are on that. But the times that we have, I would say, if anything, they're just maybe more tired. Yeah. But nothing.
And do you ever find that you maybe take on people who've been on those kind of medications or maybe anti-anxiety meds or whatever, and then TRT actually gets them to a point where they don't need them? As in that kind of like is a catalyst and everything starts improving and all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, maybe I don't need these anymore.
Yeah, that's actually very common in veterans, because when they leave the military, similar to the TRT Club for Men starter pack that everyone gets out the door, veterans get the starter pack for them. It's like Adderall, Ambien, antidepressants, stuff like that, when in fact they actually should have their hormones checked and they need testosterone. Yeah. So quite often, nor do they want to be on those, because I think for them it's more of a pride thing, but they just feel so awful and they don't understand why. Onset of getting hormones tested, getting on testosterone, and then they realize that they can taper off, and they have. And so we've had that before. Yeah.
The reason I bring that up, just as like a personal tangent, I'm sorry, but like I was on every SSRI you can ever imagine, and like I had at one point I had what was called a serotonin storm, which is basically what happens if you swallow the whole box and try to off yourself. But my depression was actually because I have way too much serotonin. Obviously, serotonin calms everything down, brings you low, right? So I was being given SSRIs that just made serotonin go up. So it just made everything worse, right? If I had anxiety, that'd be totally different. But I just think sometimes there's a bit of a miscommunication there. But my testosterone, because they were doing blood tests on me at the time because they thought I might have testicular cancer and various other things, has always come out like, I think the range in the UK with whatever measure they used was like 400 to 1100. Might have been like nanograms per deciliter or whatever. And I would always come out like 408, 404, 398. Something like that. And bear in mind, at the time, I'm training, eating well, not sleeping, but that was a side effect of everything else. And it was only when I actually started taking testosterone, which I had to self-administer, that because it stimulates dopamine, which was the root of the problem, having dopamine receptors that were just frazzled, having something that actually stimulated the dopamine was like, oh, this works now. you know what I mean? Every other medication I was supposedly meant to take to feel fine did nothing and made me feel worse.
That's interesting.
And then take testosterone and stimulate the dopamine system, which was where the actual problem was like life-changing. I mean, that's the only reason I'm still here now, you know? But I just wanted to make that point because, like, I'm sure there are other people out there who maybe are in a similar scenario where they're getting thrown all these other pills that are maybe working on systems that aren't the broken system, and maybe something like TRT. I'm not saying they should all just go on TRT, but something like that is actually going to help fix the system that is broken. And it's not the traditional thought process of your GP or your doctor or whoever you go to, you know?
Yeah.
So it could be, though, because they're all going to tell you to get a second opinion. You know, so if the conversations that you're having with a physician just don't seem to line up, that's why you should see a different physician, especially if it's hormone related, because most don't specialize in that at all. Yeah. You know, so you just find somebody else. So,
yeah, I suppose the difference for me in the UK was you can't really get that stuff privately, right? So I was just flat out told, you're under 35, unless your testosterone's like 1, like they ain't touching you with a yard, because they're just going to say, well, your test is low because you got this going on. But it was never thought of the other way around, right? Maybe all of this is going on because this is, and so on and so forth. Or I just thought that was an interesting point in that, you know, there is probably a demographic of people out there who maybe have a similar issue, and that TRT or something like that,
thyroid usually,
could actually be the game changer for them. Like thyroid is another great example. Like, oh, well, you know, at least if we give you SSRIs, you won't feel bad about feeling tired all the time. You don't be as sad about it. Where it's like, well, can we just not be tired? Can we do something about that?
I know. Well, I do actually have clinicians, if anyone listening is in the UK, there are 2 clinics that came to Silverback, and they treat the way that I would want them to, similar to how Marek looks at things. Because in the UK, it is difficult. Australia as well. Those are some of the toughest countries to get proper HRT. But if anyone listening needs somebody, I got a guy.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you've done that, because like the UK is pretty far behind.
Yeah,
in that regard, you know, we come over here and see what you guys. I know you all think your system's broken and you're still way behind, but we're another step back again, you know. So all of this is like kind of groundbreaking for us. Oh, shit, we can get access to this stuff if we
come to Florida. You can get anything.
Well, yeah, exactly, right. Go to Mexico and just buy it over the pharmacy counter. Worst case scenario.
That's where Florida sources it from.
Yeah, perfect. So another one that came up was, first off, the use of things like fenugreek and tribulus and all those type of test boosters. You can probably tell from my demeanor what I think of them, right? Anyway, the question was, do you think they do anything? Do they have any effect? And if so, should they or should they not be cycled in their usage?
So I've had guys actually drop me their labs in my DMs on Instagram. Like, I took X or whatever booster, and then it did this to my labs and my test went up. Similar to what we were talking about before, but they don't feel any different. Nothing else has changed in their life or whatever. But they are like, yes, okay, so yes, you can say it works theoretically if you can show on paper that it went up in your blood. If you want to say that was the reason, cool. I will say, just like with anything, like fat burners and all that stuff, if it worked the way a lot of the companies claim, then we would all be taking them and everybody would be on it.
Yeah.
But again, if you need testosterone, use testosterone.
Very good point. Okay. I'm going to read out one or two of the more novel questions.
Naughty?
Yeah, you said that one.
Now the good stuff.
Okay, so what are the negative, if any, impacts of chronic uncontrollable masturbation on, I assume, on male hormone and health in general?
Chafing.
I think you hit a chord there.
Like a loop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the rookie error at that point.
I mean, chronic masturbation, like, why? What's the need to do that so excessively? And are they watching porn? That can be detrimental.
That was going to be my follow-up question. Do you actually deal with individuals that maybe have, they go on TRT but then struggle with things like porn addiction and stuff because they're increased sex drive? Like, do you run into that problem?
Not the causation of go on TRT, deal with porn addiction, but porn addiction, yes, because that is also a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
So it's understanding, same thing with binge eating and the behaviors and the why and the digging and all this stuff. It gets very personal. I have no reservations asking questions, very open. So I've had a couple guys deal with that, not a ton. But yeah, I would say that can be detrimental because also, first of all, if porn is your first experience to sex, that's what you think sex is going to be the rest of your life. And then you realize that people don't look so delicately not painted, bleached in certain areas, clean, and it doesn't work that way. And I think that leads to them feeling like they cannot perform a certain way. But also, if you're chronically elevating dopamine through these methods, then at some point it's going to crash. And then you're not just going to be able to get excited at all. And then you're going to have performance issues sexually because you're expecting this, you know, BDSM occurrence to occur, or, you know, something goes sideways and it doesn't really happen the way that they think that it should.
I think the interesting thing that people probably need to learn as well is, like, if it ever came to light publicly what performance enhancers like porn stars have to use to like do their job chronically, like it's it's not a small undertaking is what I'm saying. And you're like, do you really want to go down that route and mimic that kind of route? Because they're on freaking everything under the sun to try and like uppers, downers, all the hormones and stuff like that to try and get them performing regularly for longer or whatever. And it's like, it's probably not a great role model for you to try and mimic right there. But I
read Ron Jeremy's biography. That was interesting.
Yeah.
So that would be a good resource.
That might change your opinion on it then.
But then there are questions that guys are like, you know, how do I get bigger load size? And like, how do I get more projectile? Like those things I can't help with.
Damn. Yeah, I bet all the questions you're like,
I get them all.
I didn't think people were signing up for this kind of help, but here we are.
Like, what category are you watching?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what. Maybe they need to send you their browsing history as part of their intake.
Yeah, we charge extra for that.
Yeah, that might tell you more.
Yeah.
So, would a high dose DECA only cycle be an appropriate action for someone to create enough sexual frustration to allow for a prostate only orgasm?
What the fuck?
What kind of question is that,
Joey?
Wow, that's
yes, Joey, I am naming and shaming you. You're welcome.
Prostate only, or so he wants to take it up the ass because his dick's not working from DECA dick. So that's basically just pegging.
Well, he's basically saying, can I use DECA to create an environment where I can achieve that? Because I assume there has to be a certain level of build up or for that to happen, if you know what I mean. So,
I can confidently say I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
Well, staying on that one.
What do you have to add there?
Well, when I had Dr. Todd Lee out, this cracked me up, and I'll probably remember this till the day I die. We were talking about DECA, right, and how it will lower sex drive and all this other stuff. Yeah. He was saying kind of jokingly, but not. I just realized that's right in the middle of the sweater, dude. That's funnier than hell.
Yeah.
And that a lot of bodybuilders and a lot of top lifters probably should do that because all they do is worry about sex all the time, so they don't get anything else done.
Yep.
So if they actually had more of that, then they would actually do more work and actually get more shit done instead of being preoccupied with I need to get laid and everything that they have to do to go about getting laid. And it made so much sense to me that it's a little fucked up.
Yeah, it's like, no, you don't need Adderall. You don't need modafinil. You just need DECA.
Just kill your sex drive. Just wipe it out and then think of all the stuff you could get done.
3 months later.
Yeah, your work, everything will be done at
dude, I got 3 months later, you got a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, 10 times leveled.
So what's your secret, DECA?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that.
And a serious one to finish off, which I think I know the answer to, but it was asked.
That's what she said.
Is there such thing as being too old for HRT? And then are there any negative implications for starting HRT at a very later stage in life? So like 70s, for example. Is there anything different at that point? And is there any potential drawbacks, so on and so forth?
Not that I'm personally aware of, because I've actually had clients in their 70s go on testosterone. One guy, he was 75. This is when I train people in person, and he walked into my office and he's like, "Allie, I had sex twice last night." And I'm like, that's awesome. He's like, that hasn't happened in years. He's like so cute, and you know,
Mhm.
he's like this little golfer, and it like his eyes lit up and everything. And he had a cardiovascular history, so I can't recall exactly what was discussed with his doctor, but that's usually the concern around that age. And I would say, obviously, talk to a medical professional about any pre-existing conditions or comorbidities that could be occurring. But I have not been told of anything that is detrimental.
Yeah.
So,
and you've never, like, I would theorize that, you know, you probably have more to gain, surely, in your 70s, because you've declined more hormonally than someone in their 30s or their 40s, right? So I don't see why the payoff wouldn't be greater, potentially. You know, in the same way that, like, in theory, resistance training is better for someone who's 60 or 70, right? Because they're actually losing muscle at an appreciable rate to the point where it's going to stop them going up and down the stairs, getting off the chair or whatever. So, like, if anyone should be lifting, it's you, because you have more to lose if you don't do it. I assume it would be the same with TRT there, where
and have a raging boner when you're 80. Like, can you imagine?
Go. So, I have a client who works in a nursing home, and he was saying that, like, because TRT and stuff and all that is taken on in the elderly populations now, he says they have a huge problem there where they have nothing else to do. So they're all on hormone replacement. And it's like they're all in each other's rooms all day. No one's in. They're like, why is no one in the communal areas?
Oh, that's funny.
Anymore. And
good for them.
Well,
though.
I mean, I assume they're not going to be causing any trouble if they're doing that, right?
Yeah,
like, you don't have to worry about them until someone pops a hip out or something. You got to run in because they pulled the emergency cord or whatever. Yeah, went to the wrong page in the Kama Sutra, not suitable for hip replacement. Amazing.
So going back to the hard things that we were talking about earlier with the clients that you have, you know, what is hard is, like, the hardest thing you've ever done is the hardest thing you've ever done, right? So if you scale that back into the training, nutrition, and all that other stuff, their hard thing wouldn't be seen. Like, it's hard to a lot of other people in the industry. Then that, again, can get to that point of compliance, and then the next hard thing. But for a lot of that demographic, that getting started is the biggest thing. Right. And I can say, you know, with even the demographic, the meathead demographic, the getting started on just cardio, like the hard thing. Right. So there's a process that you have to go through to be able to pick the right hard thing that's going to have an actual positive return. Right. Because if you've never done anything before, it's always hard. Like, I can come up with 100 hard things to be able to do today. Right. But not all of them are going to have a net positive on what I want to do. So how do you navigate that sphere? Because it's going to come down to the metrics that are in place, right? But then they have to decide those metrics, because, as you said earlier, if they're not wanting to get that metric, then it's probably not going to happen. But they may need that metric. So you see where the dichotomy exists?
Totally. And that's where they can score themselves in each area of their life. So where is your sleep? Let's put that on a scale of 1 to 10. Your relationships, your gym, your nutrition, and then anything else in your life that you may be dealing with. And what has the lowest score there?
But how do you, what's the top, what's the defining metrics of that score? Because you can say relationships, they'll be like, oh, that's cool. But everybody around there's going to be like, he's a fucking asshole. You know, he doesn't talk to anybody. He's basically isolated, you know, so to be able to score yourself, you need to kind of know what a 10 is, and you need to know what the 0 is.
Yeah. So usually that will come with, what is the communication like with your spouse? Quite often it's not great at the moment because their life is not necessarily where they'd like it to be. And that's why they've come to us. Or they've got a very supportive wife, they have a great relationship. Work is suffering. So it's usually one of those two. And then because one of those is suffering, the habits that come along with that are the drinking, the inability to get to the gym, all this stuff. So instead of throwing everything at them at once, it's finding which pain point is the one that we have to push. What does that tie into? So if you don't show up as the partner or the father that you want to be, that is going to tie into the future, to their children. Did they have a past relative or somebody in their life who maybe passed away due to some health issue? Like, let's tie that into what their mortality might be based on what they've experienced, because sometimes that's what people will need. Or if they see on labs that shit's not getting any better, that's something tangible that they can take. So then that is when a lab metric might become something to aspire for, not necessarily total testosterone, but some of the inflammation markers and, you know, maybe insulin resistance or something like that. So then if we get the training and the diet in check, we know that that's going to improve. So they're actually going to visually see that on paper within at least 6 to 8 weeks if we can get them compliant with training and nutrition. Usually, if training and nutrition are the first things that we tackle, sleep becomes a byproduct of that as improving. I think sometimes people try to biohack sleep at the same time, or, you know, initially take all these supplements, meditate, whatever crazy thing. Okay, that's great, but your heart rate, your resting heart rate at night is still 74. You're not sleeping through the night. There's all these things that can be connected to the training and nutrition piece. And then that's where the confidence and then the vitality can come through to the other parts in their life that are maybe failing.
All right. So it's having conversations to try to get them into the things that they can do now. Mm-hmm. Right. Because if it, to use your relationship example of, you know, they have relationship issues because they're not where they really want to be. Mm-hmm. But if all they do is focus on that, they're going to have anxiety. And if all they do is focus on how it used to be, right, that can create depression. Yep. You know, because it's always been bad, or it used to be really good. But through these conversations, you're trying to get them into more of a present state of here's what you can do now, mm-hmm. right? But through that whole thing, you still got to try to get them to stop focusing too much on here and there.